Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Smishek's Custom Baits. Rick Smishek here. Today, we're going to continue the series on the book Knowing Bass. I'll be talking about chapter 2 today, and I'll be referring to my notes rather frequently, so bear with me. In chapter 2, it talks about the bass's brain, how it works, how it's the different areas in its brain. And I'm not going to get into that part because that part can be pretty boring, and I'm thinking it probably doesn't really probably isn't really necessary to what we're doing here. But what we will talk about is how they process information and how they learn. And this will be a two-part. The chapter 2 will be 2 parts. But let's go ahead and start here. So when bass process information, like humans, they only process a small chunk of the information that's available to them. And some information they don't even process at all. They're like, for example, their ears. They can hear within a given bandwidth. They can hear certain frequencies, but some of those frequencies they hear best. It's a very narrow bandwidth that they're attuned to. Their eyes, they see certain colors best. Let me check. Smells too. Okay, they can, and we'll get into the taste thing, the smells and the taste thing later. We'll talk a little bit uh, about scents and what to use and what not to use. But that's, I forget which chapter that's in off the top of my head. I was trying to think about that, but I'm not remembering that right now. But any information that's outside of those ranges, it simply isn't detected by a bass. It's almost as if that information doesn't exist. So it's up to us as fishermen to figure out which lures to use, and we should have some more information later chapter about that as well, as far as what to choose, especially with colors. I can't. I don't think that YouTube will allow me to put charts in, like put a chart in that I don't make. I might be able to because this book it's out of print. So, but anyways, within the bass's sensory ranges, there are some things that they're really highly attuned to, and other things they just kind of see, or hear, whatever. Their nose, for example, when they're smelling stuff, there's some stuff that they can detect at constant low concentrations they're so low that it's actually pretty impressive that they can even smell it. But other things they either don't respond to or barely respond to. And bass, here's some good news. Bass, like humans, filter out redundant information. For example, as humans, if we listen to the same song 2 or 3 times, and it doesn't take long for this to happen. And for me, after I've listened to a song twice, listen to it third time in a row, well, my brain just pretty much filters that out. I have a hard time hearing it and paying attention to it after the second time. Pardon me. And bass are the same way. For example, like on a lake with heavy boat traffic, it doesn't take long, and they just filter out the boat traffic. So the boat traffic on a lake that has a lot of boat traffic, you don't really have to worry about the bass paying attention to your boat. I'm not saying that you can start dropping stuff in your boat and banging around, that sort of thing. because that's probably not okay. But the boat itself moving around and whatnot, most of the time the bass are going to become accustomed to those sorts of things and just filter that information out. um, Learning. Some fishermen think that fish are just dumb and that they can't learn. Well, that's not really accurate. While they don't have the intelligence of a human being, um, learning has nothing to do with intelligence. Even humans who have very low IQs can still learn. Okay? Learning is a natural outcome in every creature on this planet that has a nervous system. um, we learn at various rates, and that might depend on your intelligence. Um, but bass, their their behavior is never predictable. No matter what the sensory input, their behavior is never 100% predictable. And this is why we don't have the perfect lure. And even if we did have the perfect lure, we probably would have fished the bass into extinction or to the brink of it by this time, knowing humans. So it's probably a good thing that we don't have that perfect lure. So we can still go out and fish for our favorite quarry. Um, but the fact that fish can learn, this is this primary reason why they figure out sooner or later they figure out that lures are bad news. Don't hook them. And some bass will learn that quicker than others. And well, in fact, I guess some will never learn it. There was a study on a lake in Illinois. It was Catch and Release Lake. It was a 4-year study where they studied recapture rates, and it averaged that each bass was caught an average of 2 times every season, but some of them were caught as many as 16 times in a season. Okay, so some of those fish just never learned. I can relate to that because there was a pond out in Colorado I used to go to, and the first thing I do is I'd walk around it throwing a spinner bait, pretty much parallel to the banks. And there was one spot where every single time I went there, I caught a bass, basically the same size. So I'm pretty sure it was the same fish. Caught him on a white spinnerbait every single time, which was actually kind of funny because that was the only that was the only spot in the lake where that happened, or in the pond where that happened. So that was probably one of those bass that just doesn't learn. Uh, it just doesn't learn to say no, like a lot of them do. Although bass they learn at slower rates than other fish do, and we'll get into that in next week's video. But this type of learning is called associative learning. You have an experience and you learn something from it. You associate the the activity with something either good or bad. Um, like when bass actually bait fish, they associate that with food, with the hunger in their stomach going away. um, they get hooked by a fisherman, and they associate that lure with something bad, with they're fighting for their life, they're trying to get away, and then all of a sudden they're out of the water and they can't breathe properly. So they associate that with a bad experience. Um, uh, this is one of the ways that many creatures learn. Uh, our pets can learn the same way. Um, your dog poops on the floor and he gets yelled at. Well, he learns to not poop on the floor so that he doesn't get yelled at. Okay. um, Another type of learning is called habituation, where the fish learns because of something that just keeps happening. Like, say, if you've ever been to Bass Pro Shops, they have these great big aquariums in there with all kinds of fish. When they first put the fish in there and all the people are walking by, the bass will try to hide, or the fish in general will try to hide from them. But as they become accustomed to the people walking by and people stopping and staring, gawking at them, um, they get to where they just don't pay any attention to the people who are there. Um, so that's another way that the fish learn. Um, that's and that's also um, where the boat traffic comes in as well. That's another way they learn about the boat traffic is by habituation. The the boat traffic is there; it's all the time, and so they tend to ignore it because it's something that doesn't bother them. It doesn't affect them in any real way. So they begin to ignore those types of things. Um, and I think we're going to stop now. We'll do one more. Spatial learning. Bass will learn to identify their home territory, and if possible, bass like to have a territory that is theirs, or that there's their home range. um, but they learn to recognize structural landmarks so that they can move from their, if they need to, from their home territory to um, to a better feeding spot and can then come back. And this is part of why structure fishing is so important, because bass relate to those landmarks, those structural landmarks, in a big way. Um, whether it's as they're moving from one area to another, it could be spawning areas. Um, so when we're out fishing, if we have a fish finder, that's what we're looking for. Is we're looking for that structure that our quarry relates to, that that they that they recognize. They when it's right after a cold front has passed through, they'll hold tight to that cover, and you have to get that lure right next to them before they'll bite it. Um, but I think I'm going to stop here because there's quite a bit more on their learning that I want to cover in the second video. Um, but we're starting to see how the fish learns, and we can start seeing how, or reasons for why experts tell us that especially in lakes that have a lot of fishing pressure, to try to find something in your tackle box that the fish don't see on a regular basis. Um, whether it's a certain color or it's a certain type of lure, maybe something brand new that just came out, maybe you made it in your garage. Um, I think that's part of the reason why I've been having luck with some of or good success, I should say, with some of the lures that I make, is because when people ask me what I'm catching the fish on, and I show them, and they're like, "Oh, we've never seen that before." But good, maybe the fish haven't either, or they probably haven't. Um, but hopefully, as I go through this book, um, we all become better fishermen as we learn to apply the things that we're learning from the book. Um, so, with all that said, if you liked what you saw, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, share the videos, helps us out. We're pushing 700 subscribers. I know it's not a ton yet, but we're not in the thousands range yet, but we're getting there. Um, and I'm getting new subscribers on a fairly regular basis. 7 new subscribers just on the last video for pumpkin spice. So we'll get there. The hours watched are going up, so that's good too. And hopefully soon I'll be releasing shorts. I'm trying to get a little bit ahead on scheduling videos and getting them uploaded, scheduled for release, so I can work on that more. And have a little extra time to go fishing too. But until next time, folks, tight lines, calm waters, and God bless.